Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beer Ladies podcast. I am your host today, Tandy, and I am joined by our fabulous co-host and our very first episode with our new co-host, Erica. Erica, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Everyone a wave. I mean, for those who have listened for a long time and for the whole of season one, you'll have known that we actually interviewed Erica as part of our Women in Beer series quite early on. So we had Erica and Kelly on the podcast, and Erica's a firm friend of the podcast and now a co-host. So big welcome to Erica.
Thank you.
And our other co-host of the day is Katie, our good old Katie.
Hello, I'm back, and welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
Yeah. And today we have a seriously exciting episode. I'm thrilled to say that we have got Jessi Flynn, who is the co-founder of Kweza Brewery in Kigali in Rwanda. Now, today we want to talk to Jessi about Kweza is the first craft brewery in Rwanda. It's also woman owned. So we're going to go through all of that. Plus we're going to talk about some Kickstarter things and how the brewery has come to be and how it's impacted the community. And we're going to just get a good old flavor of the Rwandan craft beer scene through Jessi. So Jessi, would you say hi for us? Say hi to all of our listeners and watchers.
Hello, everyone from Rwanda.
Lovely to have you. All right, so let me just remind everybody as we are in the beginning few episodes of our podcast of season 2 that we are on all the social medias and we're also on all of the podcast apps as well as on YouTube. So you can find us at the Beer Ladies Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and at Beer Ladies Pod on Twitter. And yes, that's really it. So that's it. Intro to the podcast. Please go and follow us and share our episodes and tell a friend and subscribe and do all of those things. It really does make a difference.
And we have our vanity YouTube address.
That's right.
So now you can just go youtube.com/Beer Ladies Podcast.
That's it.
Which is great. Thanks
Yeah,
everybody for following us.
Yeah, thanks for that, guys. And please continue to. So, we want to grow from strength to strength. And the only way that we can do that is with visibility. So every signal boost counts, guys. Okay. All right. So let's kick this off. Let's kick this off with what are you drinking? And I'm actually going to start with Jessi today. Jessi, tell us what you're drinking today.
So I am drinking a Rwandan banana wine.
Ooh.
And let me see if I can get this up here. So this is a 14%
Wow.
Quite strong. And this is made by a woman and her mother who we went and toured their facility. They're known as Juliana. You can find them on all the social media too. And so this is her mom's traditional recipe that they have been able to get licensed and commercialized. And so they're one of the other women-run alcohol businesses here in Rwanda.
Shout out.
So it's quite strong. As people describe it as almost like a port. And so it's not quite a beer, but I just wanted to bring in something that is a Rwandan traditional beverage.
That's fantastic.
And is there a hint of banana off it, or is it just made from banana?
Yeah, it's made from banana. You can't taste banana at all. It tastes like a very sweet port with a smoky flavor to it also.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so the processing that the bananas go through involves heat and fire and everything. So no, it does not taste like banana. It just tastes like a very sweet port.
Wow. Is it carbonated like a beer or is it flat like a wine?
Flat like a wine.
Okay, cool. That's so interesting. I think we need to try and make some of that, Erica, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I would love to see a vineyard and winery in Ireland. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
fun? All right. Okay, well, Erica, what are you drinking today?
So I have Ballykilcavan's Clancy cans number 6.
Mhm.
And the reason I chose this is because it's called Land Down Under Aussie IPA. And with Rwanda being in the Southern Hemisphere, I know that's a bit of a stretch, but it was the best I could do. It's a beautiful black can. And we actually did a virtual tour and guided tasting with this brewery, and they're from Stradbally in County Laois.
Cool. That sounds good.
Mm.
And so you said it was an Australian hopped IPA?
Yeah, so it has several hops in here. It's Galaxy, Vic Secret, and Ella. Citrus, tropical fruits, and floral with a bitter backbone. And then the Clancy family have worked at the Ballykilcavan farm. So this limited edition can series is named after them. 5 generations. Awesome. Yeah.
That's great. Cool. Katie, what have you got today, my friend?
I am drinking a Cloudwater and Queer Brewing collaboration. It's in a lovely can with it's got pink and then it's got yellow and white. It's lovely.
I heard such good things about Queer Brewing.
Yeah, it's the first time I've actually seen it on the shelves in Ireland, so I was like, I'm going to pick that up. And also Cloudwater. You see that a little bit more frequently than Queer Brewing, but I know that there is a link, which maybe Jessi will talk about later, to the Kweza project, so I said I'd get that. And this is an IPA. It doesn't list the hops. It just says that it features a hop called Citra, so I don't know if that's the only hop or... Cool. But it tastes really, really nice. It's a hazy.
They're selling at the Tesco supermarkets here now, aren't they?
Oh, are
Cloudwater?
they?
I believe they are, yeah. I think they have a cold chain. So, yeah, keep it refrigerated all the way along.
I am going to have to keep my eyes open for that because I have not noticed them so far.
Yeah, me neither.
That could be me.
Yeah, no, I haven't noticed them either, but I'm going to keep my eyes peeled. All right, and then I have got today a style that doesn't make sense for this kind of day. It is way too hot for this kind of style, but this is what I had, and I didn't even try that hard, to be honest. But I've got a Dungarvan. Oh shoot! I'm just trying to figure out my blur here for those who are listening. I've got a coffee and oatmeal stout by Dungarvan. It's very much a winter beer, but it's lovely. It's very rich and warming, and it would have been better placed with a sort of cold night in a fireplace, but you know what? We just get on with it.
Oh, Tandy, do not complain about the warm weather, okay?
No, let me not curse it.
Well, and you've got coffee in there. So on the theme of Africa, coffee originated in Africa. So you did link in.
Yes.
You know, Jessi, I wish I could say that was deliberate. It just wasn't. It's what I had.
I think the coffee is from an Irish roastery. Does that sound right?
That probably does sound right.
Yeah.
I have had that one, Tandy, and it is delicious. I really like
yummy.
it. So good.
It's from Flavorhands Mills and Coffee, especially
Oh, I'm going to have to correct you on your pronunciation there.
Thank you. Please do.
Flavins.
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 Okay.
And there used to be an ad on television. It was like, start the day the Flavins way. They make porridge oats as well.
They do. Oh, that's it. It's the oats from Flavins and coffee roasted by Badger and Dodo.
Very good.
So
I think they're from Cork. Yeah, I've been saying the porridge wrong as well, so don't feel bad.
I think I actually have bought their oat milk before. To try theirs versus the Pros versus the Oatleys, but you know, anyway, that's great. Okay, so let's talk about Kweza. So Jessi, could you start by just telling us how you found yourself in Rwanda to begin with, because you're clearly not from Rwanda, and then we can talk about how you got involved with Kweza, and tell us about Kweza a bit.
Sure, yeah. So I'm from Boston in the States. And I am a landscape architect, forester, horticulturalist by trade. And so I was working for a design company in Boston, and there was a project over here in Rwanda so there's an office in Boston and an office in Rwanda. They had me come over for 6 weeks to do a design kind of competition, which we ended up winning. And so they said to move over here. So I thought I was coming for a year or two, and now I live here and I run a brewery. So I had heard about this project because it actually began in 2016 through a Kickstarter project between Beau's All Natural Brewing in Canada and this woman, Bina Ueneza, a Rwandan entrepreneur. And so they had started this project, and I had read about it, you know, online. And when I came to Rwanda, I said, "Where's this women-run brewery? I really want to drink." But they said, "It's kind of quieted down. We don't know what happened to it." You know, fast forward a little while, I was at a party So I homebrew. I learned how to brew with my father and my sisters in Boston. We grow our own hops and stuff in Boston. And so I was homebrewing, and people, were enjoying it. And so word kind of traveled, and I was put in touch with Bose Brewing. And so they asked me to just kind of help pick it up and see if I could help restart it. And so I was still working full time as a landscape architect, and just thinking, well, if I'm going to be here for a while, I need good beer, because there are no craft breweries in the country at all. There's 2 mass produced lager companies. And so, I was, in order to get good beer, I figured I could help get it restarted. So that was a few years ago now. And we just, went through a lot of process to test the viability of the business here and figure out what needed to happen. And we got everything lined up, and we needed somebody to do the doing. So I quit my job as a landscape architect and started Kweza full time.
Woo!
Amazing.
You took the
Congratulations.
Well done.
So it's the first craft brewery in Rwanda.
Correct. So that's not to say that there isn't brewing here, so there is a strong homebrewing culture of sorghum beer, banana wines, banana beer, different homebrews. And then there's the 2 large commercial lager, facilities. But there is no craft beer. You can't get anything outside of those mass produced lagers kind of anywhere.
So if you walk into a beer store or a liquor store in Rwanda, you can only get the 2 mass-produced beers. Can you get imports?
In a couple of places, but they're very, very expensive, because Rwanda has a great tax law in ways of beer has to be 6 months shelf life when it arrives to the country. And it also has a massive tax on it. And so really craft beer is not viable to be imported. There are some beers that are imported, like we have some Guinness and things that are imported. But the selection is not wide or great.
And traditionally, would women have brewed in Rwanda like they would have in other countries, or?
Yeah, so women are the brewers here. And so there's me and Josephine. So Josephine's a Rwandan woman who brews with me. And she's been brewing sorghum beer for 27 years.
Wow.
So women are the ones who really make the different alcohols, and it's, same as everywhere else, kind of whether it's celebration, mourning, ritual, families just together, whatever it is. Rwanda has a very high kind of rate of drinking, and most of that is kind of homebrew consumption. So.
And what kind of beers, if you're talking about sorghum beers that maybe Josephine would have brewed for the last 27 years, what is the difference between that sort of a beer and the beers that we maybe know in the Western kind of world? I don't want to say Western like that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so the sorghum beer that is traditionally brewed it looks almost like a gruel. It's kind of grayish, and it's very sour, and it's thick. Like it's like a milkshake. And people either kind of love it or hate it. But it's sour. So it's just a homebrew process that that Josephine can tell people about. But it's you brew it one day, it sits overnight in pretty much a bucket. Like, it's made in most times 20 liters, 5 gallons at a time. And it's an overnight brew, and the next day you have to consume it all. It goes bad pretty fast. And so there's long-standing tradition of it would actually be put into gourds, and then there were multiple straws that people would all sit around and take from the central sorghum beer vat.
It's quite similar. Oh, sorry, Erica.
I saw a term that I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it right. Ikigage. Okay. So that's how beer is called in Rwanda. Is that right?
That's the sorghum beer.
Okay. And I read that it's a native grass that's well adapted to droughts and high temperatures. Did your background in botany kind of feed into that side of the raw ingredients?
For sure. There's what I love about sorghum. Well, first of all, it was also Bo's Brewery had, so them and then Christian von der Heide, who runs Tagwork Beer, Paris Brewing Company. He's the former president of Siebel Institute. And so they had come together to Rwanda and looked at what was available for fermentation ingredients and come up with a recipe that was sorghum, cassava, and barley. And so I was already kind of handed, a legacy recipe in that way that we've just been modifying and playing with since. But it does make sense, in terms of horticulture, climate, environment, sorghum is climate friendly. So, and it doesn't require all the fertilizers, pesticides, water. It's much more sustainable.
And I'm just going to say that before we were recording this episode, I had never heard of sorghum.
Really?
So I did had to do a little bit of research. And if you're watching on YouTube, I now have sorghum in my background.
Ooh.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I went to a website, the 10 things about sorghum you never knew. It is the 5th most planted and used in production grain. So I would never have put it in a top 5. I've never heard it.
It's quite widespread around the world, and even in talking to brewers in the States, there's a pretty good, you can source sorghum pretty easily in the States at this point. And as climate change happens and barley is kind of coming under threat, let's get used to brewing with some sorghum. So
and some of the other stuff, it's higher in protein and lower in fat than corn, which is really, really good. And then it's like, when you hear something for the first time, and then it's like, I was watching The Walking Dead, and there's an episode in it where they're told, go and find sorghum, because everybody's going to go for the barley, but sorghum will grow better.
Well, there we go.
And I was like, oh my God, I only learned about this week, and there it is.
Now you'll see it everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So definitely sorghum, 1, because it's here, 2, it's environmental, it's a native crop. So both as a landscape architect and as a brewer, I really try to go towards native plants. So we are brewing biodiversity beers here, for example, so sorghum falls under that in that it's a native crop to Rwanda, but also, for example, we made a jasmine IPA with 2 species of native jasmine.
Yum.
And
we're working jasmine.
Right? It's that little kiss of jasmine, right at the end of a beer is lovely. So we're working with 2 of the national parks and the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund on making beers that involve ingredients that will emphasize using local ingredients and tell stories and bring them into an enjoyable context. Nettles are not fun to run into while you're hiking the volcanoes, but you involve them with some blackberries from the mountains, and then you can make a beer out of it. And they can tell a story, and proceeds go back to the parks when we sell those kind of beers. So yes, plant choice is both fun and important to me in Kweza's recipes.
Yeah, I really love that angle, the sustainability side of it. And I had a possibly dumb question, but do you skip the malting process then, or?
No, it's still, so there's a couple ways you can brew with sorghum.
Okay.
So Josephine sources our sorghum through her long-term sources that she uses, and she used to malt it herself. So it's malted in the same way of you get it wet, you let it start growing, and then in sorghum malting here, you actually then put it with banana ash, so banana leaf ash. And then it's dried, and then you can use it in brewing. And so there's that way to make it, and then you can also use enzymes in order to get to the starches in it. So, and it's also just a different brewing process because the gelatinization temperature is much higher than barley. So we just have to change kind of the process that we brew with. And it's also, sorghum is incredibly versatile for the brewing world, which is fascinating. So if you brew it at kind of normal brewing temperatures, you can make an incredible sour. But if you brew it with different step temperatures at a higher rate, you can make something that comes out and people don't even know that it's sorghum. They think it's a regular barley beer. And so it has a really wide range of application, just on its own, using different brewing techniques.
Sure.
Would you get the malted sorghum? Would you get it at different roasting levels, the same as you would with barley, or does it come sort of in one go? Oh,
yeah,
okay, cool.
It kind of comes one set thing right now. But one of the things that we do want to start experimenting with is roasting it from that point and seeing what we can do with it. Because a couple of our beers right now are 80 to 100% local sourced, and a couple of them are still using imported malted barley. And we really want to convert the entire base of Kweza beers over to be majority locally sourced ingredients. And so part of that is that, there isn't kind of the malting facilities here that can provide reliable, same quality, and then also with weather changing and things, because climate change in Rwanda means that the dry seasons and wet seasons have changed. So it's kind of unpredictable now as opposed to the past. And so, times where you used to know, okay, we can set the sorghum out to dry, have now become, 2 days in, it starts raining. And so mold and things can enter the process. So we're really we're working with the Rwandan government and some other nonprofits and some farmers to see if we can set up a small scale malting facility here so that we can keep using, because there is barley that is grown in country, barley, wheat, not as much as sorghum, but there is some. And we would like to be able to get it into a kind of more regulated process so that we can make different beers and roast to different levels that we can rely on.
And for people who aren't that familiar with Rwanda, it's quite a fertile country. It's got like lakes and rivers all around it, basically. I know it doesn't border Lake Victoria, but it's like just a little bit over from it. And
yeah,
right?
We're smack dab in the middle of the African continent. We are a landlocked country, which is also part of the reason about those import taxes. We don't have an ocean port, so everything has to come overland. So our equipment that we bought to get our pilot scale going, which is what we're brewing on now, had to come, from Europe to Nairobi in Kenya, and then it overlanded in a truck through Uganda to enter Rwanda. And it either has to do that or has to go through the south and come in. And so yeah, we are quite landlocked, but it's high. We're at 1,500 meters, like a mile above sea level. And so it's always between 70 and 80 degrees, like around 25, Celsius here. It's perfectly comfortable year round, like, because we're 1 degree south of the equator. So it's kind of the same year round, except for, rainy and dry seasons, and quite comfortable. And 81% of the country relies on agriculture as their livelihood. It is,
Wow.
we have volcanoes to the northwest where if you've heard of the mountain gorillas, that's where they live. And Lake Kivu, which is one of the deepest lakes in the world. It's part of the Albertine Rift. And then it goes all the way. So Rwanda's also incredibly small. It only takes you like 3 hours to drive across it. But all the way to the east, we have savanna, and that's where your, giraffes and elephants and lions and stuff are. In a much more arid area, that's where sorghum gets grown, and pineapples and things that require a much more arid and hot environment. So we have incredible variety, within the country, which does have a really rich agricultural strength.
And the name of the brewery and your beers, do they incorporate the local culture or language?
Yeah, so Kweza is Kinyarwanda for to harvest or purity. And our Kweza logo, if you look at it, is a takeoff from, there's the 5 volcanoes that are seen from Rwanda, and out of it are coming a lot of grains. And so those are the grains we use. And it's a spinoff of, at the King's Palace here in Rwanda, there's a display of arrows, a traditional display. And that's how they're displayed, is kind of the way that the Kweza logo has them in a kind of an arc. So yes, our logo and our name are based here in Rwanda, which we want Kweza to be a unique Rwandan brewery. We don't want you to come all the way to Rwanda if you're a tourist and feel like you're just having German beer in Rwanda, right? Like it should be something completely unique and something that supports local agriculture and the history and the context and the culture. So that's what our logo and our name hopefully have set that precedent.
Is there a specific plant that you use for bittering as opposed to hops, or do you get hops in? Are there options?
Both. So there's a plant called Vernonia, and it is used traditionally in the Ichgaje sorghum beer. And so it gives a level of bittering. And Josephine has an amazing taste palette. I think she's one of those percentage of people who are super tasters. And she has put it, I believe, closest to Columbus hops when we did we did a range of tea tastings of imported hops. And then also did a tea of the Vernonia. And I believe it was Columbus that she has determined it's closest to. So we haven't actually made one of our pilot scale brews yet with Vernonia, but it is definitely something that we are hopefully going to be using more of.
Mm.
And how is the water there? Like, do you have a municipal source, or are you filtering it all? Or
yeah, so we have a municipal source, and then we have a water filter on top of that. At the brewery that we're building, so right now we're just in a pilot scale. This was supposed to be our R&D phase to really kind of just test supply lines, test the market, if they like the beer, figure out how to brew here. And so at the larger brewery, we were initially planning on only rainwater, but because the dry season can last 3 months, the amount of water we would need to store on site to get it through that dry season is just prohibitive in both space and cost. So we are planning on doing rainwater capture and hopefully brewing some with that. But also we're probably going to be digging a borehole, and we're working with a local NGO here who works with communities and sets up community water sources. And so what we're looking at right now is putting in a borehole so that we have enough water for the brewery, but also having the organization run the front of it so that people in the local community can come and buy water through them. That just basically pays for the maintenance of that water source through the nonprofit. So then hopefully both the community and the brewery will have a source of water at that location.
You mentioned that you're getting help from NGOs and the like. So is Kweza a commercial concern, or what's the purpose, I suppose, of Kweza? Does the money get reinvested? I'm presuming it gets reinvested, but in what ways? Or
yeah, so we're a private business,
Okay.
business. Early on we did talk about, a lot of people interested in this project at the beginning have worked in a background of kind of nonprofits, government, community organizations, service, and we did ponder, should we try to make it more of a social, nonprofit or something like that. But ultimately, and the thing that that really lights a fire under me every day, and why Kweza is important, is because the goal is to help women be economically empowered. And so this is a for-profit business that the women involved will make money off, and then they can do, what they want with that. And because one of the things that I realized early on, obviously we need capital to build a brewery, to buy our equipment, to, to get started. And that we wanted it to be women owned. But then, the research into figuring out who could be actually our investors, it's incredibly hard to find female investors, especially Rwandan or African female investors, within kind of the world that's accessible, and I'm sure, there's people out there for everything, but I was finding mostly white men that had available cash, that wanted to invest. And so that was just kind of one of those, of course, it didn't, that made sense to what I knew about the world. But what I realized was that means that if we succeed as a business, then those original investors are the ones who also then build their wealth, and it continues the cycle. And so early on, we said, let's do everything we possibly can to make sure that the people who own, run, and brew and lead this company are women, ideally Rwandan women, and or people of color. So right now, for example, our investors are majority women, and then we have people of color from a few different countries and a couple of Rwandan people. And so we're really trying to make sure that and also we have a employee equity, so Josephine will be owning part of this company. And so that the goal is that the work that gets put in will benefit women and people of color to do the little bit that hopefully we can do through proper business. It's not through charity, it's not through nonprofits, it's through sheer business, that the people who invest in it will create wealth. And what we really want to have happen is generational wealth building.
And then do you see like a trickle down with off licenses or craft beer pubs that are, women led, eventually opening up if everything goes well?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And we are being proactive about trying to pick restaurants and places that are women owned, in order to premiere the beers. So it either has to, like our very first premiere was actually at Akagera National Park. And that was more because of the proceeds go back to the conservation of the park, which then also we're going to be working with co-ops around the park to grow things for the brewery. And then here in Kigali, we're working with women-owned businesses to really kind of, right now we do have a rare thing that's in high demand. It's, people don't have craft beers, so they want what's here. And we really want that benefit to hopefully continue that kind of cascade effect of a knock on to another women's business who works with us. So yeah, we're trying, and we're also trying to source from women's co-ops, and then our spent grains going back into farming and other opportunities. So we're trying with every stream of income, output, investment, to just let values drive our business decisions. It can't always happen. We need to keep things moving forward, and sometimes we have to make business decisions if we just have to make this happen. But we are trying to make it happen as much as possible.
So speaking of that, can you take us through this Kickstarter campaign that you are launching very soon for Kweza?
Yes, so we have almost our complete equity investment. We are still looking for some final investors, so especially women and people of color that want to invest. But then we are looking to do a Kickstarter for two reasons. One, to raise money. As we know, things like pandemics suddenly happen, and so you need contingency plans. And we don't know what we don't know yet. We are, as we said, the first craft brewery in the country, so we don't know what kind of other obstacles we'll run into. So we want a little bit of extra operational cash and the money to be able to put up this brewery. So we're doing a crowdfund, and so the other reason we want to do this is because it's an awareness building campaign, basically about African beer, women in beer, African ingredients, because you guys are the Beer Ladies podcast, so you're well familiar with the fact that women traditionally brew around the world, and brewing started really in Mesopotamia and Africa. Yet we think of it as a German kind of owned process, right? So part of it is just to put a bunch of breweries with aligned values together, who all are going to brew a beer that's either made with sorghum or other African ingredients, and ideally are also either brewed by women or there's women involved in that brew. And also we have Black-owned breweries in the States getting involved, and we're just trying to, again, use our values to leverage the values that we have and that are aligned with other breweries. So everybody there's about 20 breweries involved on 3 different continents, and so we'll all be brewing a beer that like I said, either involves African ingredients, and I'll be exporting actually Rwandan sorghum to a few different breweries. Obviously there's a lot of breweries here in Africa, in Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, South Africa. Am I missing any right now? That are going to be brewing, and so partnering with other breweries to kind of share their experience. So besides the collab itself, there's also a lot of different prizes. We have some merch and a couple trips to Rwanda to come and see Rwanda itself and come and brew with us. And we have a chef that works with us, Debbie Leet, and so she'll be doing kind of a prepared meal with people, and we'll be matching with beers. You can brew with Josephine, and then go off to see some mountain gorillas and some safari, and it'll be fun. So
that sounds like a heavenly holiday. I just want to go.
Right?
I think it's our next meetup.
Come. So we'll be launching that Kickstarter soon with all those different ways to get involved. And then hopefully just people that want to help us get off the ground and ensure our runway. So that will help us. We have a brew design done for the brewery. So we're working with General Architecture Collaborative here, and they've designed the brewery. So we're ready to go once we have all the money in the bank. And so the money will help us, one, get the brewery up and running, and then the more that we're able to raise, we'll be able to make sure that the water is sustainable, that we do a wastewater wetland as part of it, that we have solar power. And also that there's, extensive beer gardens. The great part about this brewery is also, like I said, Rwandan weather is always perfect. And so we have hectares of beer gardens that you can go and enjoy a good ginger beer in. So the funds are really to help us make sure that we get off the ground and we get running, and that we get to profit positive. There's a couple partners who have already asked us about potentially a Kweza 2.0, and about international, either making another brewery in another country or exporting. So there's interest, but we still have to get Kweza 1.0 up and out of the ground. We really need to prove that the market demand is here. And so that's what everybody that gets involved in the Kickstarter will help us to do.
Absolutely.
I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. So for those listening, we will tweet and share on Instagram and do all the things once that Kickstarter is up and running. But keep your eyes and ears peeled, because to be able to support a woman-owned, woman-led brewery in Rwanda just is amazing. And so Jessi, all of these breweries are going to be brewing with sorghum or other African ingredients. If you were to give a home brewer right now a tip as to how to brew with sorghum, what would you tell them?
It's about figuring out what style you want, and then playing with it. Like I said, there's if you just brew it as if it was regular barley, you're going to come up with an incredibly sour beer, which some people might want. So, and sorghum matches really well with fruits. Like we make a mango sorghum that people just call it our lawnmower beer. Like it's a nice mid-afternoon, smooth drink. And the other nice part of sorghum is that it inherently tends to be lower alcohol. So, and we're finding that low alcohol beer is in high demand as we get going. Mm-hmm. So our lower alcohol beer goes faster than our higher ones. And so the sorghum can be incredibly versatile depending on what you want to do. And then if you want to get more into an ale or something more kind of the beer that then it's playing with gelatinization rates and multi-step mashes and higher temp mashes. So, but it is possible. I mean, home, that's what sorghum beer is brewed at home here. So it's not like it's something that you need to have specialty knowledge about. You can do it too.
That's awesome. I definitely want to support this Kickstarter once it's live. In fact, I just want to visit Rwanda. Like, we just come visit. Have a beer ladies trip.
But we can't be seen to have fun, right? Drinking beer. This was something Jessi was talking to us beforehand. Do you want to talk about this?
About which? Sorry?
A beer advertising in Rwanda.
The health claims of the country's laws.
So for the amount of beer that Rwandans consume, which I've heard it, depending on the year, it's between like number 2 and number 6 of all the countries, 54 countries in Africa. It's an incredibly high rate of drinking. And that's including half of the country that doesn't drink. So the other half is making up for it. So also, and why that is, the other thing is that the Seychelles, the islands, off the coast of Africa, are usually somewhere close to Rwanda in consumption rates, and they're the top 2 countries with the highest population density. So, people are hanging out together and having fun, or like, I don't need a drink. I don't know. But the Rwanda Food and Drug Administration is the one who they've recently taken over as the new ministry that will oversee pharmaceuticals, beverages, food, all the licensing of that. And so part of what we were invited to a meeting with them that when they were trying to set the new regulations for things like marketing and advertising. And some of the big, points are, one, you can definitely not market to minors, which is great, and you just have to make it clear that you're not marketing to minors. You cannot make any health claims. So you can't add an ingredient to a beer and say, this makes you healthy, or, and so, which I think is also great, like people, because there were problems in the past here with people selling alcoholic beverages and also claiming that they're good for you. So it's kind of, counterproductive in many ways. And so there is just a strict, you cannot say that this promotes health in any way, shape, or form. And under discussion, the last that that I was involved is whether or not you can promote that beer is enjoyable. So whether or not that meant you could be smiling or not in an advertisement, or you could mention, that it's fun to have in a social setting, that was kind of, it set off a hot discussion in the conference room that I didn't even need to participate in. All the other industries involved were, are like, well, that's what I drink beer for, to have a beer with my friends and enjoy. So that was, the last I know was left for discussion. It's a heavily regulated environment here. And so we're learning a lot as we go. We did just receive our license to be able to make and produce beer, which is, as far as we know, the first, craft beer license in the country. It's technically for draft beer production and consumption.
Woohoo! Well done!
Licenses.
It took a while. And so now we're working through zoning permissions. We've gotten unofficial approval on that. We're just waiting for some more steps. So it's fascinating to learn in depth, the multiple industries and multiple agencies that we need to work through. So part of it is that, we can't say that Kweza is enjoyable, but you can come and enjoy it.
And what is the drinking age there?
18.
Okay. And do you think you'd have cans or bottles eventually, or what kind of packaging do you envision?
Primarily, we want it to be draft beer. So we do, because it's the first craft brewery, we want people to be able to come in and have a flight and be able to discuss the beer and see how it's made. Because the two, giant industries right now that make it gets made far away, and you get a bottle that costs $1, and like nobody understands. Like I remember the first time that I ever, I went to Sam Adams in Boston, and I was like, oh, it's made of stuff, like real stuff, and real people make it. And it just blew my mind. And so that's the experience I also want to help give to others. And, Josephine loves telling people about how we make the beer and what the process is behind it. And that is what we're finding so far when we serve people beer, they just ask about how we make it and what's in it. And that just leads to more and more questions. And so people are really engaging with it. And then they're really enjoying also the variety that we're providing. So there's all different sides to bringing craft beer and draft beer into the country. And as part of, we do own a brewery's worth of equipment. So there's a brewery down in South Africa, Fraser's Folly, that during the lockdown, so South Africa went through 4 prohibitions during their lockdown. So, not easy on the industry at all. And so this one brewery kind of saw this coming, and in order to maintain cash flow, combined with they were moving some equipment around, they needed a way through, we needed a way in, so it worked out really well. And so we actually bought a brewery's worth of equipment, still sitting in South Africa, waiting. We need to build the brewery here. Go Kickstarter. Build the brewery to bring the equipment into. There's no reason to bring it to not have a place to put it. And part of that includes a really nice bottling line. But we are right now considering selling off that bottling line while it's still in South Africa and buying a canning line. Because part of being in Rwanda is, in that landlocked aspect, we don't have any sandy rivers, we don't have any beaches, so therefore we have no glass industry. So every glass has to be imported, and they're usually imported from India or China. There's some made on the African coast, on the Indian Ocean coast, but not much. And so by the time you put that on a truck and you haul it across 3 countries and up to the altitude we are, that's a huge environmental footprint and a lot of cost. I mean, bottles weigh a lot. So when you look at the environmental kind of discussion between bottles and cans, it's there's kind of it could go one way or the other, but being where we are and what's happening here, cans are a clear winner. And the government also has, has said that they would like it if we do go in the can direction, because there's a recycling facility here that will recycle the cans that end up, in the system. So hopefully we will have draft beer and cans, but every day is a learning adventure. We'll see what happens.
And what do you imagine would be your core range, if any, as opposed to the special brews?
Right. We have 5 beers right now that we're kind of consistently making that keep turning over. We have a ginger beer, a ginger citrus beer that flies, especially on a nice sunny day. And then a sorghum beer of different sorts. So whether it's mango sorghum, or we made one with the Pink Boots blend last year. And so just made kind of a sorghum ale. And then we do a Belgian blonde that it goes over well. And then we have an IPA that's a traditional kind of take off of a family recipe that I make with my father and sisters. And we do a stout that originated in the Black is Beautiful campaign with Weathered Souls. So we did a stout for kind of the Black is Beautiful campaign and to see how people reacted to it, and it went over really well. So we continue to make a stout. So those are our kind of 5 beers. We've also played with pineapple passion fruit beer and different kind of fruited things. So we'll find out, where it all lands. So far, our most popular, I would say, is ginger and the sorghum beers.
That's great. I really admire and I love the fact that it's so very focused on biodiversity and on local ingredients, and doing the best with what you have instead of just trying to replicate every other brewery's core range. I think it's really, really cool.
Well, it's from it's what is beer in Rwanda, so and that's where Josephine and her history come in, and she'll be teaching people about the history of sorghum brewing, and really making sure that it becomes if you go on an Africa through beer kind of tour, it should look different everywhere you go, and every environment you go to, and every culture you go to, and should reflect those stories and those ingredients and that environment. And even things, like I said, we don't have glass, so we're getting clay mugs made and clay growlers by a female potter. And so we're trying to really, everything that we need to do, we're asking if we can make it, Rwandan, whether it's through sourcing or use or training or whatever it is. So we're seeing how much we can make it a completely local brewery.
That is amazing. I just feel so unaccomplished in my life, But I will support you.
Don't feel unaccomplished, Katie. I mean, my goodness. That's great. So Jessi, who else is involved in Kweza at the moment? You've got yourself and Josephine, and we're going to hear from Josephine in some clips later on in the episode. Who else is involved?
Debbie Leet, who I've mentioned is a chef. So she's Zimbabwean and has been in Rwanda for 11 years running a catering company. And so I actually met her through a project I came to Rwanda to design. She became the chef at it. And then we met and started chatting, and I was like, oh, you're in, can I pick your brain about things, regarding starting a business here and things like that. And then when I was getting equipment brought in to run our pilot scale, I was looking for a place to put it. And so I ended up renting a room in Deb's business. And that turned into her, just all the days I was brewing, she'd come in and check it out. And so that turned into her both joining as a partner to run the restaurant side of the brew pub, as well as an investor. And so it's Josephine, myself, and Deb are the women of Kweza.
Nice. And tell us more about the brew pub. What is it going to look like? What is it going to feel like? What should we expect?
Oh, I should have had a picture ready for YouTube. It's really a kind of, it's a very basic it's 2 buildings side by side. And one of them will have the microbrewery. So we're going to be making, starting off at about 7,500 liters a month and going up to, we hope, 30,000 in the future. But that's not very big. We're making 500 liters a batch. And so it's about the kind of exposure. There's glass walls into the brewery so people can see what's happening in there, and really kind of get into it. And so part of the purpose of the building even itself is exposed rafters and exposed materials, because it's about exposing the industry, so we want the structure of the building to reflect kind of what we want in the industry. And then, so alongside that, so there'll be a nice green core between the two, so a little atrium, and then there'll be the restaurant. So there'll be a restaurant, like a 50 seat indoor restaurant, kitchens and an event room. And then out front of both of those will continue beer gardens that run into a huge 6-hectare park. So there'll be parent pavilion, because there's not a lot of options of things to do in Kigali. It's a very small city. And especially for parents with children kind of looking for something new to do, there's not a lot of options. So it'll be, event kind of, and Rwanda is also very slopey. It's the land of 1,000 hills. Everywhere you look, you're on a hill looking at another hill. And so we're just building that in, having different levels of terraces. And so there'll be different event terraces that you can have, in different private gardens to be able to go out and have a braai barbecue. And then there'll be a parents pavilion. So there'll be like a kids play area where parents can, hang out and have some beers. And there'll be an outdoor kitchen, so Deb can make some good braai. And she's been working on things like stout pork pie and ginger chicken wings and different things that match with our different beers. So hopefully it will be a place that people can come and really enjoy themselves, enjoy the beer, enjoy the food. So that's really what we're aiming for.
Oh my God, that just sounds fabulous. I cannot wait to go. I'm like, we should have a beer ladies trip, right? As soon as it's all built, it's up and running,
Yep.
you had
me at braai, Jessi. You had me at braai.
Yeah, I think you paint a lovely picture, and your positive energy is very infectious. So I would love to see the momentum keep going, because it's family friendly and there's an educational element to it. And I think the timing is actually going to work in your favor. So wish you all the best of luck with that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jessi, maybe a final question before we start wrapping up, but what do you think the impact of Kweza is going to be on the community?
I think that will be really an interesting thing to see, because there's like the basics of employment, and but what I'd love to see is that Kweza becomes an incubator for craft brewing industry. So a lot of people have been like, aren't you worried about competition? I'm like, I hope there's competition, because in ways, things like malt, will only really become commercially viable if you have multiple breweries. That, and like, I assume at some point I'm going to get really bored of my own beer. I'm going to want to be like, I want to go to other craft breweries. But I think part of that, what we really want to do is, people have been really helpful to me. So Steve Beauchesne, the CEO of Beau's Brewery, we meet regularly, and he mentors me and talks me through everything from like carbonation to like HR issues, you name it. And Christian von der Heide, and then Ep1, she's, I don't know if you know Ep1 from Brewster's Craft. So I've had people that have mentored me a lot through this process. And so I want to be able to do that in this. And so hopefully, I think it kind of fits also with women-owned, led, brewed, chefed, that we're also the mothers of the industry. And so also, I think, and it would be great if any of your listeners know anything to the contrary. If, well, now that we're licensed, we are the first craft brewery in Rwanda. Rwanda may be the first country in the world where the commercial craft brewing industry is being started by women. We can't find anything to the contrary. So, but it fits with Rwanda. Like more than half of the parliament is women run. It's a very women empowered country. And so along those lines, it's, the government is very supportive of Kweza, loves what we're doing both agriculturally, women's empowerment, starting another small industry. And so hopefully we can continue to kind of bring that forward and train other people into the industry, so that people can continue along, whether it's beer or non-alcoholic beverages or whatever it is, just to show that women can run these businesses and Rwandans can run businesses, and that we can hopefully bring this new technical skill set of kind of marrying the background that exists in the culture that exists with the technical stuff that, the Rwandan FDA requires for licensure and distribution. And that will really, help build up a small industry, and along with all the feeder sources of all of our ingredients and the outputs of going back into different industries. We'll see what it contributes to the community. I suspect it will have a life of its own that I cannot even expect right now.
Oh, we can only hope. No, absolutely. This is the most phenomenal project, and we wish you the very, very best of luck with it, Jessi. Where can we find you? Where can our listeners and our viewers find you on social media, website? Give us all of the details there.
The best is probably our Instagram right now. So it's just Kweza Craft Brewery on Instagram. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the things. And so we're either under Kweza Craft Brewery or Kweza Brewery on each of those. And we do have a website that's kwezabrewery.com. But right now there's only like one landing page. We're working on it. So it should be up and running soon. We'll have some of the background about us and different ways that you can get involved and about our beers. So all of those different ways.
Amazing. That's really, really fab. And once the Kickstarter is up and live, we will definitely share it on our own Beer Lady social media, everybody. So keep your eyes and ears peeled to Twitter, mostly Twitter. That's where we are mostly anyway. But we'll definitely share that. And hopefully we get loads and loads of support from Beer Ladies listeners. That would be the dream.
Yeah.
Right? It takes a village, or it takes a global village to raise a women-run brewery.
Indeed. Indeed. All right. Well, that's fantastic. Jessi, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming on. And for the rest of us, so guys, you know the drill. We're on all the social medias. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and every single podcast platform. Please share this with a friend, and especially an episode like this where, sharing with a friend could really mean that Kweza gets off to a better start. So please share this episode with a friend, whether it's on YouTube or on your podcast apps. And we will see you guys next week. And we're going to close out with a couple of clips with Josephine, who couldn't make it to the recording because as of recording there is still a curfew in Rwanda. So a little tricky to get Josephine on, but we've pre-recorded some messages from her and what she thinks the impact of Kweza is on her and the community. So enjoy that. Okay, friends, thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Please tell me why you're interested in Kweza.
For me, it was an opportunity to open for me to increase my revenue, my lifestyle, and then I have a curiosity to know how we can make real beer like Rarirwa, like Skol, as you know, here in Rwanda.
Has joining Kweza changed your life in any way, and if so, how?
Yes, it's changed. When I joined Kweza Brewery Craft, I raised my salary, and then I think to expand my revenue, I started to build a house at home. And think to rent for people, and then I will.